Hey, what's up? It's Blake,
And Jackson.
and it is July 7th, 2022. It is
Woo!
Thursday. We are a little late, but it's all right. There's not really a tight schedule for these things, so it's all good. But yeah, I don't know, quite a few things happened since the past like week and a half since we recorded. I had my birthday, which is pretty chill.
Woo!
Not really too much. I had to work on my birthday, like uh, like I have in the past couple years, but it could have been a lot worse, and got to have a nice dinner. So all all in all, not too bad. And July 4th was pretty fun. Got to shoot some fireworks with some friends.
hmm
Couldn't really ask for much more than that. It's a pretty good time. What about you, Jackson? You do anything particularly interesting?
I participated in a march for women's rights this past week, or earlier this week, I
Right
guess.
on. Right
Um,
on.
Went to your birthday. Fun times. I think that's about it. You might hear some like loud splashing. A couple of my cichlids are just like beating each other up, I guess. So they're just going at it right now. I don't know what's going on. I just fed everybody, so maybe
Reminds
they'll
me,
be quiet.
reminds me this one time I was at my friend's house, and his dad had or their dad had a couple of beta fish, and they
Mm-hmm.
had two. I know he had at least two males because he's like Blake, you want to see? I put them in together. They fight each other, and then his daughter's like, no, they hurt each other, and he's just like watching them like the fish attack each other and get pissed off, and he's just like he's like lightly chuckling to himself. And I'm just like, all right, I don't want to see this anymore. You can take them out, like
Well,
because like their fins were getting ripped up and shit. And I'm just like, all right, this is kind of messed up.
cichlids are naturally aggressive, um, and so the thing is, you want to like slightly overstock your cichlid tank. That way, they don't have an area to like carve out as their own. So it can't be like this is
Mm.
my corner of the tank. And so the funny thing is, like, they don't really have that, but they're still beating each other up over there. They're like, I mean, they're cichlids are just mean fish in general. They're aggressive. So
Yeah,
I even tried to get ones that are like not particularly aggressive, and they still fight a lot. So
mean little buggers.
they are. They don't really mess with the Bisher too often though, which I think is kind of funny. He's just kind of watching them as like, okay, guys, everybody calm down. So
Yeah.
I enjoy them. They're fun to watch. They're very colorful. I like it.
Huh. Let's see. Oh, well, there has been a couple of things I've been up to. Now I think about it, not too terribly much. I've mostly been just clearing out my nana's house since she passed away. So we're having to find a place for all of her stuff, and so I've been helping doing that, lifting furniture, sweating my ass off in like 100-degree heat. So yay.
Yay.
And let's see. I almost finished watching Stranger Things. I sat down to watch like the last episode, and then I got distracted, and then I sat down later to watch more of it again, like the next day. Still didn't finish it. It's 2.5 hours. I rarely sit down and just watch something that's like over an hour and a half or 2 hours in one sitting.
Is that per
Even if I
episode?
no, no, no. So the regular episodes are only like an hour, maybe an hour and a half.
Okay.
But the finale for the whole show is 2.5 hours long, which I mean,
Dang.
like I said, I've watched plenty of movies up to that length. Like I've watched movies past 3 hours,
Mm-hmm.
like some Martin Scorsese movies, like Silence. I'm pretty sure the Goodfellas and Casino are pretty damn long.
Oh God,
Uh,
Goodfellas was so long.
the Irishman, any of the Lord of the Rings movies, especially the director's cuts. Like I actually got on to one of my ex girlfriends one time. I'm just like, so you'll sit down and watch the Lord of the Rings movies that are well over 3 hours long, but you can't sit down and watch the Irishman. She's like, it's different. I'm like, it's not.
I mean,
uh,
I mean, in fairness, they are different genres.
Yeah, they are different types of movies, but I mean, I guess if you just like have a really good
Look,
appreciation for like the mobster genre, then it's a different story.
here's the thing: I do not have an appreciation. I've watched a few mobster movies, and be honest, a lot of them have sort of variations on the. They're all sort of variations on the same theme, at least the ones that I've seen. And it's like, okay, it's good. Like, it's a good movie overall. It's fine. Eh. But kind of like once I saw the first one and then watching the next one, I was like, okay, I'm seeing a lot of parallels here. It's like you're
Uh,
either with us or you're against us, and if you're against us, we're gonna kill you. But if you're with us, hey, you're gonna do fine unless somebody else whacks you.
well, a lot of organized crime was just formulaic like that in general,
And there's
but
nothing wrong with that. I mean, they're good. Like I said, they're a lot of them are like some of the most well-known movies of all time, right? Like The
right.
Godfather and Goodfellas. Yeah, so it's not that
Which
they're
reminds me,
bad movies. So
Ray Liotta, who played the main character in Goodfellas, like died like a couple weeks ago. I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks.
dang,
So yeah, R.I.P. Which is weird because
pour one out.
he looked totally different than he did in his character. Did I mean obviously there's been like 40 years in between the filming of that, but he just no. Whenever you get older, your face can get kind of bigger, especially your nose or
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know. It's weird. People reach their like late 50s, early 60s, and it's like their nose just starts to swell up like fucking Mario. But yeah,
I guess that's where
not
they all the fat moves from their like belly to their nose. I guess I don't know.
yeah. Well, I don't know. For some of them, it's like have you seen those pictures of people where it's like they get so fat that like their forehead starts to sag? Like you know what I'm talking about? Like they've got like a third bicep on their forehead.
Third bicep. Oh my god,
Yeah,
that's
that's when that's when some people get past the like 600-700 pound mark. You know,
Jesus.
like, have you ever watched those like shows where it's like my 1,000 pound life or whatever? You
Yeah, those
see a lot
shows
of
are
that there.
really sad.
They are very sad, and the hoarding ones or the people that are like, I'm addicted to eating drywall. It's like, good God, like
Oh,
get some help.
yeah, My Strange Addiction. Oh yeah. Oh man,
Yeah.
bonkers stuff.
uh, well, anyway, unless you had anything else you wanted to say, we can jump right into the stories.
Yeah, let's do the do.
I included some stories and posts followed by a screenshot of a comment or reply to them that I thought had some relevant or
Sure.
interesting information on them. So that a couple of them are followed by those.
Awesome. This first story that it's not in screen. Oh well. Russia loses 150 troops, 21 tanks, and 14 armored vehicles within the last 24 hours.
And this was like a week ago, but still, just those numbers, just staggering. Like, dang! Like how many tanks did you say it was again?
150 troops, 21 tanks, and 14 armored combat vehicles.
It's so funny because literally, ever since even early on in this conflict, Ukraine has been steadily gaining tanks
Mm-hmm.
from Russia that they've been capturing. So like they started off with like some tanks.
Right.
And Russia had a lot more of them, and they've just been steadily gaining more of them. They've also been blowing up the Russian tanks, like with all those rocket launchers we keep sending them, like the
Right.
the SAMs and the whatnot. Like it's really weird because like the way I think it has to do with like the way that the ammo is stored in those Russian tanks. Whenever you hit them just right, it makes like their turret fly off like 200 feet into the air. It's really crazy.
Yeah. I was reading an article. I think it was last week because I haven't looked at anything about the war in this past week. But there is it. I think it's north of Mariupol is where the the Ukrainians have actually like reached the Russian border.
Hmm.
Um. So yeah, there are regions of Ukraine where the Ukrainians are at the Russian border, which tells
Yeah,
you how
but I
well
mean,
things are going for the Russians.
well, the Russians still have a lot of land, though.
Yes.
I mean that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're
Like,
they're in the Donetsk and Luhansk region right now, and they're holding those pretty well. near as I
Don't
understand.
they still have a good bit of the southeast, like around Mariupol?
Possibly.
As I think I want to say that like right now or at some point, Russia had like a good like 25% of the country, if not like a third. But I mean, I could be wrong. It is hard to keep track of that sort of thing on a day to day basis.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Well, now I'm curious because it wasn't. Maybe it wasn't Mariupol. Then now I've got to figure out which one. Uh, well, now I don't remember. No, okay, it definitely wasn't Mariupol then.
And it
Okay,
sucks
well then you're
about
right.
like Odessa too. I think they still have Odessa, which
Hmm.
is tragic because a friend of mine has family there, and it's all hits very close to home to them.
I'm sure. Yeah. Regardless, they're still
Well, because here's the thing. So like so they're from Moldova, right? And
mhm.
I I like in the past they had expressed like sort of like pro Putin sentiments because they're from. So Moldova is this sort of offshoot of what used to be the Kingdom of Romania. It's all Moldova is also a historical region on the Black Sea, just in general in Eastern Europe. But the current nation of Moldova was an offshoot of Romania, and then there's an offshoot of that on the eastern portion called Transnistria, where they use the Russian ruble, and they're basically sort of like a little Russian puppet state that where they just they're just really like Putin this like we love Putin and like it's really like I think I kid you not even have the hammer and sickle on a mostly red flag for their region, believe it or not. So
Oh.
yeah, but anyway, so my friend she was from there, and so I was curious because I remember her saying all that stuff about Putin, and I remember her being sort of like offended whenever people made fun of Putin here in America. And I was like, so what's your take on this whole thing? She's like, it's awful. I'm just like, really? She's like, yeah, my family's from Ukraine. I'm like, I did not know this. I'm very sorry.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's whack.
it's very whack. Well, I mean, that was just a little snippet. We can move on from that.
They're taking insane losses. It's kind of a wonder that Russia's still going at this point.
Everyone's just taking fat L's.
Except the Ukrainians. They're making giant W's.
Yeah.
Alrighty. House sand made from crushed glass rebuilds Louisiana's shrinking. Sorry. Um. Oh, okay. This is apparently taking me to. They're shrinking. I should have looked at this in advance. I apologize.
That's all right.
Um.
Basically, there's this chick in New Orleans who started a. I'm not sure if it's a business or a nonprofit where people
You
can bring in
usually
their.
need
It's
sand
a
to make
it's a
glass.
recycling thing. So people will bring in their glass bottles, and they will break them down into different levels of fineness of gravel or to all the way down to sand,
Mm-hmm.
and they're taking these bags made out of repurposed like coffee bags from like people she knows who run coffee shops and other materials, and they're making sandbags, and they're mixing dirt with the sand, and it's actually some, and then they plant plants in those areas. And it's actually helping to stabilize the ground and make it firmer to like less likely to wash away. And I just thought that it was something cool coming out of Louisiana because
Yeah.
for the because we do have the fastest decreasing coastline of any area in the world, and it's very tragic. But yeah, so just a little bit of positivity. I mean, like I'm sure you probably heard about like efforts for people to try to rebuild the wetlands before bringing down sandbags and
Yes.
stuff.
Another way is diverting, like tributaries of the Mississippi in
Right.
an effort to slow the drastic erosion. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, I've heard of those
And it really
sorts of
sucks
things.
because it's not like a small scale issue too. Like a lot of these a lot of this wetland destruction down there and like our marshes off our coast are like due to the fact that these people that put oil wells and these industrial fishing ships have to run through there, and they just cut these straight rigid lines that don't flow with the natural scenery at all,
Hmm.
and it just it weakens the overall infrastructure of that biome, And so those wetlands that act as a buffer for the hurricanes, which South Louisiana could really use because it's pretty wet and pretty low, so there's a lot of flooding,
Mm-hmm.
and it just wreaks havoc on the environment down there. But it's a small step, but it's still doing some good. And that's I mean that's it's not often we get very good news in the environment, especially since the Supreme Court just did a whole nother crazy deal where they settled a dispute between the EPA and Virginia, and they basically are making it to where or they're easing restrictions on companies regarding carbon emissions. So,
Yeah,
and there was a couple other deals with the EPA thrown in there too, but that was the big takeaway from it. So,
they're removing the teeth of the EPA basically,
yeah, so
which is
we're
wonderful. It's great.
right.
Uh, yeah.
Basically spitting in the face of, trying to keep our our environment beautiful, which it sucks because there are a lot of very beautiful and diverse different types of environments on North America, really, but in just the United States alone, like it's a very large land area. Like we've got deserts, marshes, flatlands, plains. I don't think we have tundras, but we've got all sorts of different types of forests and mountain ranges and
Right, we've
valleys.
got
And
like our temperate boreal forest. I will say, you know what? We can do one thing right. We have probably some of the best like national parks in the world.
we do. And what was it? Was it Teddy Roosevelt who started that, or was it
He was definitely a big part in that. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think that's really cool of him because he was a real outdoors type. He did like to do a lot of hunting of animals that are, I think, now close to endangered. But then again, everyone was doing that at the time, so can't really fault him for that.
I'm going to put this elephant head on my wall, my living room
Yeah,
wall.
it's like BRB. I got to go to, I don't know, freaking Kenya or something to quick scope a lion. Like I can the presidency can take a back seat for a couple weeks, guys.
Yeah.
Nah, but
I mean, in fact, he also um, founded the FDA, which I don't know. I put nothing past the Supreme Court at this point, so
oh my gosh! And you know what's crazy? The EPA was started by, what was it, Nixon or right? It was Nixon or Reagan, I want to say.
yeah, it was one of them. Yeah, that's right. Because I remember being like surprised
Yeah, it's
reading
very
about,
weird.
but yeah, no, I really don't put anything past them at this point. So anyway,
No, they are chopping heads like crazy. They are just like, you know what? We're gonna show you that we aren't just some old people on a bench. Like we can actually do stuff. May not be stuff that even a majority of the country would agree with, but we're gonna do it anyway. Like the Roe v. Wade thing. What, like 60+% of people
yep.
agree that abortion should be readily accessible, and they're just not listening to the people. They're just whatever powers that be exists in Washington.
Have you heard about the was it Moore versus Harper uh, case that's going to be looked at?
I did not.
So, um, I I guess I can. It's yeah. It involves a dispute over North Carolina's congressional districts. At the heart of the case is what has come to be known as independent state legislature theory. The idea that state
Hmm.
legislatures cannot be checked by the Supreme Court when it comes to setting rules for federal elections, even if the legislature's
Hmm.
actions violate the state's constitutions. The state's
Oh my
constitution.
gosh.
Of course, William Rehnquist, Clarence Thomas, and Antonin Scalia. Yep, they all have mused about it. So democracy itself could come undone in the next few months. So there's that, I guess.
Bill Clinton said it himself.
I did not have sex with that woman.
Democracy is at risk. Was that thing he said on Family Guy? He's like, I bet we could eat that whole pig.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
uh,
Yeah, I love the portrayal of George W. Bush on American Dad, where he's like a drunk, and he's like telling Stan about like oh, don't get mad at Haley for doing drugs. I did lots of drugs, and look, I'm the president of the United States. Um. Anyway, but yeah, that's cool. The sand made from the crushed glass, that is really cool. Anything to
Yeah,
rebuild our coastline. So
right. And Lord knows that we need to do something to do with glass because the South and especially New Orleans consumes a lot of alcohol. So those glass bottles, which a lot of parts of the state no longer recycle because it's not economically viable. Basically, they can't make money off of it. So why should they put any money into it? So they stopped it. Like up here in Shreveport, they stopped recycling glass a while ago because they weren't making money off of it. So
freaking
yeah,
yikes.
yeah.
Speaking of freaking yikes, Russians fear commanders are selling their own troops' locations for cash. Holy crap! What?
Yeah, so the whole shit show of the Russian involvement in Ukraine just it gets more crazy. The I can hear the circus music playing. Like, not only are the people being totally lied to about the nature of the war itself and the nature of Ukraine, like what within Russia, like what was that lady that we saw who said like there was a Russian soldier on the phone back to his mother, and she was like, "Don't tell them anything.
Yeah,
They're the ones that started COVID. They're monsters," and like all
which
this
is
crazy lies.
it's so bonkers that like no, it's like the meme where it's like broke China started COVID, woke Ukraine started COVID. Um, yeah, like God, it's so bonkers. It's so detached from reality that they're like, no. First of all, gotta appreciate they're still concerned about COVID. Like, pat on the back for them. But Ukraine started it. Like what?
Yeah, and that whole point of like Ukraine being full of Nazis is so BS because it's like, okay, yeah, they had the Azov battalion, which was like a paganist neo-Nazi group that was sort of like it sort of got incorporated into the army. It was really just these crazy militia people, but at the outset of the war in 2014, when before when the long stalemate, it they sort of got incorporated into like the National Defense Force, sort of like the National Guard, at least
Mm-hmm.
from what I read. But Mariupol was their stronghold, and they wiped out most of Azov, and then all that was left was like maybe about 200 people left, and they surrendered. So the quote unquote Nazis are mostly out of there.
Yeah, yeah. I do remember that talking point in the news. So that's interesting.
Yeah, the goal of denazifying Ukraine, which is just so ridiculous to me.
Yeah, another. I guess like it's such a weird propaganda tactic. Like that's you're denazifying Ukraine. Like what year
It's
is
like
it?
it's the same level of like ridiculous misinformation as like they talk about in like the Borat movies where he's like talking about like if you see the second Borat movie where he's talking to the rednecks and he's like talking about women's rights and he's like but the smartest doctor in all of Kazakhstan said that women have a small brain, that's why they can all make a good decisions, and like he shows this like obviously like forged like medical like handbook, and they're
Mm-hmm.
like, no, this ain't right. It's literally as ridiculous as that.
That is pretty funny. But no, I haven't seen that, so I should probably watch that.
Oh, you gotta watch the first one. The first one is a gem.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like Eric Andre, where you can't tell what some of it is a skit and what's some of it is real.
Mm-hmm.
So like it does involve goofing on a lot of people. There's a scene where they go to like one of those neo like evangelical preacher churches where they're like speaking in tongues and stuff,
Uh huh.
and it is wild. But yeah, we should definitely watch that sometime. I think you'd get a great laugh out of it.
Who played Borat?
Sasha Baron
That's
Cohen.
right. Did you ever see Trial of the Chicago 7?
No, funnily enough, I actually started watching it this week. I watched the first like 15 minutes
Well, you
before I
need
got
to
distracted by it.
watch the whole thing because it's really good.
I, I've been told.
Yeah, probably by me in part. So it's really good. Highly recommend. Da da da.
Well,
Well, okay.
well.
What does this say? Anyone knows Russian is the hunger and cold thing from a Russian expression that doesn't translate to English well. Someone replied, "No, it's
Oh,
quite
oh yes,
literal. You could
that's
interpret as just bad conditions, but that goes the same way." So what's that
yes.
about?
So that was another deal of propaganda. So like in a recent like Russian news output of some kind, they were talking about how they're basically like we need to not like America because they are helping Ukraine, but things are bad over there. They're talking just about how just just like that we have terrible conditions in our country and that we are all hungry and it is very cold. And I'm just like, it's the middle of summer, dude. Like it ain't that cold here, man.
I mean, in some
And we are all still
places,
plenty fat.
it can be
Maybe
cold.
in like Alaska
No, bro, it can
or
be cold in
like
Michigan.
this this in the middle of summertime though. I mean, I
Yes,
can maybe in like the
I
middle of
went like a few
nighttime.
years ago. The winds like off guess
Oh yeah, off the
Lake
lakes.
Michigan.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, it can be
right.
pretty cold. Like I was wearing a jacket in the summer. I was
Yeah,
surprised. I was like, I don't like this one bit. I want to go back where it's hot.
when I was in Chicago a couple years ago for Lollapalooza, it was like the middle of summertime, and it was like decently warm during the daytime, but at nighttime it got down to like the 50s, and I'm just like, whoa, this is strange. Like, I was not prepared for that.
Yeah, yeah, it can get
Yeah.
cool. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the
Anyway, if
cold.
you wanted to move,
In case you hadn't noticed, don't like it. This
well,
make
I love the cold. I'm ready.
Wow. I bet you
Sorry, go on.
do. I bet you do. This one doesn't surprise me at all. Overall confidence in U.S. institutions at record low. The presidency, Supreme Court, and Congress all saw all-time lows in confidence.
Yeah,
That just
so
doesn't surprise me in any way, shape, or form right now, given by the fact that
yeah,
there are like iron fences around the Supreme Court. So
yeah, I saw multiple pictures of that. Basically, I think the Supreme Court is just going to keep rolling out some really hot button legislation, not legislation, but some edicts,
the
some verdicts,
rulings, yeah.
and rulings. Yes, and they're anticipating people maybe getting too fed up and wanting to do something about it. So they're doing like what they did when they could actually foresee civil unrest, like the BLM protests at the Capitol, a year or two ago. Like they were prepared for that. They had the freaking National Guard ready and everything, and they had the buildings blocked off. But it's just what little trust we have left in our system is just crumbling day by day by day. And I don't really think it's going to get much better, especially since they just keep blatantly going against the will of the majority of people here.
Yeah, yeah, it could potentially get very scary in the near future if
Yeah, yeah,
well, because on the one hand, you Blake, can you hear me?
yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, on the one hand, you have the Supreme Court, which is rolling out edicts. That's a good way to put it. Um, which are at odds with how most people feel, and then the presidency and Congress are doing almost nothing about it. The so-called checks and balances that our government is supposed to have on each of the branches are diddly squat right now. It seems like one branch is unilaterally just doing whatever it wants, making decisions by itself. It takes six people, right? 6 people
Hmm.
to do what it seems like is just run the government. And the president's doing nothing, Congress is doing nothing. There's no response that I can see, unless there is and I'm just not seeing it, but it really looks like there just is no response. They're just going to keep doing it until they're finished,
Unchecked.
basically. Yeah.
Exactly, unchecked too. And Biden has been giving out a lot of speeches lately that have been really ruffling my feathers. So, like, we've had this horrible string of mass shootings,
Mhm.
which kill Supreme. What else is new
Right.
in America? But like, especially deadly, especially frequent back-to-back shootings, and along with all these Supreme Court decisions and these shootings happening, Biden, he keeps giving off these speeches where he's just like, someone's got to do something about it. And I'm just like, yes, it is your job. You
Guy
can
in
change this. Do your damn job.
guy in the hot dog suit. We're all trying to figure out who did this.
You hold the highest office in the land. You are, well, this is probably an outdated term, but quote unquote, the leader of the free world, and you are standing idly by while your party controls the presidency,
Mhm.
the House, and the Congress, and you are doing nothing about it.
Right. Yeah,
It's
all
really frustrating.
right, both houses of Congress, the Senate and the House, and the presidency, and yet nothing. And it's like and you have to wonder, because when Trump was in office, it seemed like, and he did not control both both houses of Congress, or both chambers of Congress, sorry, I guess whichever word you want to use. Um but it kind of seemed like he was just doing whatever he wanted. And then we get Democrats in
Yeah.
office, and suddenly it's like, it's all this hand wringing. Oh, we can't do it. You guys got to vote harder. Give
Because
us some more
he's a
money.
do nothing Democrat. They just wanted Orange Man out of the office so badly they were willing to just like, let's just put in a friendly face, and it's like this man is so old and geriatric. Like he can talk for about 7 maybe 8 minutes in a speech, and then he starts having like a Sundowners episode, and he just starts puttering out, and like his battery is about
And I
like
mean,
going out of juice.
look, I'm I'm definitely left of Biden. He's a centrist, right? He is
Yeah.
ever so slightly left, you know. But like, and how is it that we can't get anything better than Biden? How is it that the that polls consistently show that Democrats are or voters, Democrat voters are perfectly fine with more progressive Democrats, and yet the established party is like, you know, doing everything they can to not go left of middle, right? They're like, oh,
Yeah, election after election, we have people like Bernie Sanders, like hyper progressive people that have like massive cult
well, hyper
followings,
progressive by our
stadiums
standards,
filled. Well, yeah, by America's standards, but probably decently moderate compared to like say European standards, for
right?
example. But the like people like him, like selling tickets, like to hear him speak, like line out the door, people camping outside stadiums to hear him talk,
Mm-hmm.
and then you've got like there's just no energy behind people like Biden. It's just I don't see the reason why they keep going to these people that are quote unquote more electable. And it's like, I feel like if you want actual change done, you have to put someone in who's willing to get the change done,
Right,
like a real go getter.
and it doesn't have to be Bernie Sanders, right? Like if we put someone in who's younger than Sanders but still embodies his ideals, great, fine. Run them instead. Get somebody, anybody out there who is willing to actually do something. We
Do
need
you think? Because
we need to
it
sweep
looks like
house
it's
first
it
of
looks
all.
like it's
Nobody over 60. I
it
mean,
look
let's start there.
right. Yeah, it looks like AOC is going to be trying to run, or people are really wanting her to run because she will be 36 by the time
Mm-hmm.
2024 rolls around, I think.
Right, and say and
And
Vermont, same state as Sanders. Um,
oh, that's right. Yes, yeah, she is Vermont. Yeah.
I don't I don't know. I don't know how that would go over as of right now, and I feel like there would be a lot of hesitancy as at right now just because of how young she is, and I honestly can't blame people over that necessarily. However, I also think we don't need Biden to run again, and in fact, most Democrats are telling Biden, "Please don't run again," and he's like, "No, I'm going to run again." It's like the thing is, I'm almost certain the conservatives are going to run Ron DeSantis from
Right.
Florida,
Yeah.
the governor of Florida. Um, and I'm willing to bet because he's not especially popular in Florida. He didn't win by that much in the
Hmm.
last gubernatorial election. He didn't. And so he's not especially popular, even, in a state that has a lot of Republicans. And so I don't believe he could beat Biden in a presidential race. I don't think he could. I think we'd get a sort
Hmm.
of redo of Trump, of the Trump Biden election, probably.
Hmm.
But there is one snag, and that snag
Yeah.
is the Moore Harper case. And so if it turns out that the electorates can basically decide where all their states' votes go, regardless of which way their state votes, that can be a problem. That could be a major problem for democracy. So
Yeah.
again, we're not staring down the barrel of like the end of democracy anymore. We're like got our finger on the trigger and we're starting to pull. So
Yeah. It's like a heavy 15-pound trigger pull double set, but we're past like the first click where it starts getting a little bit easier.
right, yeah.
Yeah.
So I did also want to point out one other thing you'd mentioned earlier about
Mm-hmm.
the Black Lives Matter rally. So I want to
Hmm.
draw a parallel. Well, I guess a or well, I want to look. I guess not really draw a parallel. I want to look at how the Black Lives Matter protesters were treated versus the riot.
January 6th people.
Right, the January 6th
Yeah.
traitors, the insurrectionists. When you basically had the Capitol, like the military out on the steps of the White House and on the steps of the Capitol building in full fatigues, right? Weapons ready for the Black Lives Matter protesters. On the other hand, you had a few police officers who were struggling to hold a line against. I remember the Black Lives Matter protesters out front of the White House and the Capitol building were peaceful. They were not trying to force their way in, right? The January 6th
Right.
insurrectionists were forcing their way in. They were battling the police on the steps. And where was
They
the
came there with the intent of forcing their way in too.
right? And then of course after when the police were doing sweeps afterwards of the building, they found like pipe bombs and some guys had zip ties and various guns and stuff. So it's like they were not coming there to peacefully protest. They weren't.
Yeah, the police won't do shit against armed protesters, but they will gladly tear gas, pepper ball, and beat people that I know are mostly peaceful.
Yeah.
I just think that's really funny because like this whole notion that police officers are here to protect us falls straight through. It falls right through and flat once it comes to shit like January 6th, where they let people walk all over them, and like the Uvalde shooting,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have a right. They don't have any uh, obligation to protect us.
Right.
They just don't. They don't have to put their lives on the line.
And if they
They absolutely do not. If
and if they don't have an
it
obligation to protect you, then they can only be used against you.
Yeah, so like the whole protect and serve thing, it's like at this point, policing is, in my opinion, this is just my hot take, but
Mm-hmm.
like if they have been demonstrated that they do not have a right to protect us, then basically we're just people who we pay them
Mm-hmm.
like government money through our taxes so that they can just harass us and inconvenience us and give us financial hardships for stuff like fines, tickets, petty crimes, that sort of thing.
Right.
Like they're just the hound dogs from the government just to just harass us.
Let's
They're just a
remember.
nuisance at this point.
Let's remember. lots of police groups were formed to capture runaway slaves. Let us not forget that.
Yeah, but my thin blue line
Well, that thin blue
against
line,
anarchy and chaos.
it evaporates when the conservatives are the ones rushing the steps of the Capitol building, doesn't it?
Yeah, that or whenever there's children being slaughtered.
Mm-hmm.
Which, by the way, that police chief who
Yeah.
gave that order to stand down, behind closed doors, like a couple days ago or something, got signed in to be a city council member, which I'm not even sure that's how that works. I think you're supposed to be elected, but basically, I think that the whatever city they're in is trying to give him like a little cushion because from when he probably ends up stepping down from being the police chief.
Right. Oh, also, fun fact about that situation. So there was a mother who got handcuffed at some point during that event because her children, she had two kids who were in the school, and the police apparently handcuffed her at one point,
Yeah, they
and
were stopping
she,
all sorts of parents from going in there.
yes,
Yeah.
they were like arresting them and whatnot. Well, she managed to get through and save her two kids and get them out. The thing is, she's actually been harassed by police in the weeks since that happened.
Oh, I bet. And you know what? There were cops that went in there to save their kids, and then just when there was a cop who, I kid you not, was in the middle of a haircut. Someone gave him word that there was something going down at that school. He stops mid haircut, grabs the barber's shotgun, and heads off to the school. Gets in, runs in, grabs his kid, and then dips and leaves with him. Like, just total disregard for the safety of all the other children there. And the parents are just trying to do what those selfish cops are trying to do.
Yep.
They're trying to save their kid. Like,
Yeah, let the freaking parents in. Give the parents the guns and let them go, you know? Because the parents were putting their lives on the line for their children. The police were not. And if it's not their job to do it, what do they exist for? They only exist
right.
to oppress the masses. That's all they exist for at
And
that
they
point.
had a SWAT team. This Uvalde, Texas isn't that big of a place, but they have a SWAT team. You'd be surprised what percent of this budget for a city goes into the police. Some places it's like high as like 40, like 30-40%, which is millions and millions of dollars. There was a there was a little documentary or a YouTube video I watched just today about this little town of like 1,200 people, where basically there is this racket going on where the police are finding every single reason that they can to pull people over, uh, disregard their insurance, for the sole purpose of letting this one tow truck company tow their car. And basically, they're running this racket with that tow truck company where they're sending people to court and they're getting a kickback from all the cars that they're towing. And it's just this whole little circuit of corruption. And like, there's hundreds of people at court in this um, little town, like every day, because they're just people are constantly being pulled over and harassed for the smallest things. And they have this mine resistant vehicle that's like basically a tank. Like, it's got a turret for a mounted machine gun, but it has four tires. And this there are little towns like that all across America. It's really
Yeah.
despicable.
Uh,
They can literally just run a racket like that.
yeah. And I'll say that in the two instances that I have been involved in, so the one where my car was broken into, and then the one where your car was broken into, nothing happened. As a result, right? The police came, filled out a report, whatever, and that's it. Nothing happened. And I mean, you can say, oh, well, there's not a whole lot they can do, but like, what's the point? If the house gets
The only
broken
reason I
if the house gets
the
like
only
broken
reason I even
into, and
filed
oh, go ahead.
sorry, you go on. The only reason I even filed a police report was so that it could just go on record, for statistical purposes or something, because I wanted it to be counted.
Right.
I knew damn well there was nothing that was going to come of it, or at least the chances were very, very slim. But I just want someone to know about it. Okay. Yeah.
Right, unless you're like a business or something, like what are they gonna do? For most people, there's not a whole lot they can do or that they're gonna do, and so it's like, what's the point? if I call the police and they literally can't do anything about my broken window, or whatever, then like, what's the point? You weren't there. You couldn't have stopped it, and you can't do anything about it now, or you didn't stop it. And unless there were cops everywhere, you probably couldn't have. And so it's like I don't see what the point is. I just don't get it. It's like in theory they could stop, some. Sure, in theory, they can stop some crimes as they happen in some places. Like, okay, fine, but for the vast majority of crimes, that just isn't going to happen, right?
And
Or
that brings me to another thing. So these there are so for things like red flag laws, for example, the police can intervene before these tragedies happen, or someone wants to shoot up someplace.
mm-hmm.
And in some states, they're stricter than others. So I told you about that guy who made those jokes on RuneScape and ended up doing
Right,
6 years in federal prison for it,
right,
right?
mm-hmm.
And I also saw recently, just about a week or two ago, there was a kid in Florida where he made a couple of jokes on Discord. Same thing. The police came and arrested him for threats of domestic terrorism. But in Illinois, where I believe it was the dude who shot up that Pride parade, or that 4th of July parade. My bad. He first off, he looked exactly like you'd think like a school shooter would look like. Like weird sunken in eyes, like medium length dark hair. He was also a rapper, believe it or not, and who was constantly rapping about like you know very violent things. And he had two incidences with the police in the past. So one of them being I actually can't remember what the first one was, but it was something violent between him and his parents. The second one, he actually threatened to kill his parents, and
Yikes.
the police came and took a bunch of knives and swords away from him. And then, not that long after that, his dad, one of his same parents, he threatened to kill, filled out the paperwork for him to get a gun license because in Illinois, evidently, it's different from state to state. But in Illinois, you have to have a license to have a gun.
Okay.
And he filled out the gun license for him to get those guns. And so this dude was on the police's radar. They knew that this dude was weird, and he had songs where he idolized and fetishized like Columbine, and just he was what they call like a death fetishist. He's just obsessed with killing and people dying, and like there's people like the Scream killers that were really into horror movies. Like he was one of these people that was on the police radar, and still with all these vetting processes and uh, all these social networks in place to try to stop these bad things from happening, a massacre still happened. So like it's because of shit like that that really makes me believe that like no matter what you do, no matter what legislation you pass, I don't think there's any real solution to this. Like you can even pass the most draconian gun laws possible, but they're already here in the country. We already have so damn many of them, and I don't think it's ever going to get much better. I just really don't.
I don't know. I mean, as we've discussed before, this is the degree to which we have these sorts of shootings is uniquely American. Like these things, sure, mass shootings do happen in like every country, but the degree
Not in
to
the
which,
frequency they do here, though.
yeah, right, exactly. So I mean, and I do think gun laws are going to be part of it, certainly, but also bettering our mental health system. That's going to be another part of it because we just have garbage mental health care because we have garbage health care in the United States. So, but those are all those are all things that will sort of factor into each other. Redistributing wealth
Yeah,
to
it doesn't
lower
help that we
income,
have we have the weakest social safety net. We
right?
have like the weakest social safety net in this country. Where other countries, where if you need um, oh my, I was going to this list of like some of the some of the basic like most like politically agreed upon things like in the country of Sweden,
Mm-hmm.
like paid maternity leave,
Right.
a monthly stipend for parents based on how many children you have, all that sorts of things, public daycare systems, and just really simple, basic, good sounding stuff. But if you were to introduce anything like that in America, it's just like immediately be socialism, communism,
Well,
like just
and the
immediately
funny
get
thing
shot
is,
down.
like the response, at least that I've always seen, is like, why doesn't everyone get exactly the same amount? Like, because not everyone needs the same amount. I don't understand how the response to like we should, like you said, like the stipend for parents depending on how many kids they have, whatever. Like, I don't understand how the response to that is always, well, so everyone should get the same amount, right? Like, no. Why? Why? How does that make any sense? There's no reason for that. No one's suggesting that everyone should get exactly the same amount of money. Like, ever. No one ever suggested that. Or I'm sure somehow Fox News would make it seem like if you actually get good health care, that's bad for you or something. Like, for instance, um, when the so like public health options, right? Like having an option that people can get for a lot cheaper as opposed to private insurance or private health insurance. And like, oh well, if everybody gets insurance, then doctors won't be able to see everyone. Well, then that just means we need more doctors and nurses. Isn't that what that means? So doesn't that create more jobs for Americans? Am I wrong?
Right.
Is that
And
not what that does?
and the way that our insurance here in America doesn't help either. So like I don't know about you, but I've had to go to certain types of doctors before where it's like, well, we've got a couple different options around the city of places you can go to. What's your preference? And it's like my preference is the places I can get it done the cheapest that my insurance will cover. And they're just like,
Mm-hmm.
well, I don't really I have no way of knowing that. I'm just like, neither do I, bitch. Like like
I'm trying to do it
uh,
for not $10,000. Is that possible?
yeah, I'm trying to not have to cut off my foot and sell it for on the black market just so I can have a healthy immune system or something like that.
No, Blake, you gotta do one of those like those GoFundMe's and end up on TV as like, wow, how sweet! 5-year-old kid sells lemonade to pay for mother's chemotherapy. Isn't that sweet? On to other news.
Yeah, no, you basically have to rob Peter to pay Paul with your own body. I have to sell a kidney to save my liver, or vice versa.
Yeah. Speaking of failing state, pregnant cancer patients may die because doctors fear treating them could now count as illegal abortion, experts say. Which we all saw coming,
Yeah.
by the way. There's no one who didn't see that coming. Like, seriously, if you have a brain, this was going to happen. Ectopic
Yeah.
pregnancies kill people, and the medical term for a miscarriage is an abortion. Now you can pretend like, oh, ectopic pregnancies aren't really babies. Whatever. It doesn't matter. It still counts as an abortion. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's
Right.
it's so stupid. We treat there are different medicines for like birth control, which another one, which cross your fingers. But there are medicines for birth control and other things that can like double as abortifacients, right? So
Right.
under certain circumstances, these can induce abortions, but that's not what they're being prescribed for. Obviously, they're being prescribed for, as a birth control or what's another? I can't remember. Like headaches or seizures or something like that. They have more
Right.
than
Right.
one function, and of course now doctor or pharmacists are going to be like, I guess you can't get your medicine anymore because the state has now banned abortions. Sorry,
Oh,
sucks for you.
you don't want to die of cancer, but you happen to get knocked up at the same time. Yeah, I guess we can't treat you because it could jeopardize the baby that you honestly probably don't want because you're dying.
Right.
But you know,
Yeah, it's frankly horrifying. Was it? I think it was in Ohio where I think it was the governor is trying to like pass legislation to re-implant ectopic pregnancies, which is not a
hmm,
thing that happens. It's not possible. Well, okay, maybe it is possible, but like it's unheard of. It's ridiculous. It is so divorced from reality. But it makes sense because if you're an idiot guy, you don't know anything about medicine or women, and you're up here passing laws that are going to restrict women, then of course, it only makes sense you'd be the dumbest person on the planet. You know.
Yeah.
Oh Lord. Anyways, um,
You'd be surprised how feeble the basic Americans' understanding of biology is. Like I was
I
trying to
would
have a
not be. I
conversation with
teach a Bio 101 lab, Blake.
True, but like I was trying to talk with someone about the mechanisms of the ways one of the vaccines work,
Uh huh.
and so I was talking about the difference between where the mRNA vaccines versus the kind where they just insert like a dead portion of like the
An
viral
attenuated
surface,
virus,
and
yes.
so yes, and so like I was trying to explain to them, I was like, so then you have the mRNA, and they're like, and that takes away a step, right? I'm like, no, it adds a step because with the what would you say the attenuated virus, you already have the viral proteins there,
Mm-hmm.
and your immune system binds directly to them,
Right.
and then creates the response. Whereas with the mRNA, your body it has to use its machinery to replicate or to produce the viral proteins that then your body puts in the immune response to
Right.
react against. And it's just I'm just like this the whole central dogma of biology just people don't even understand that like the whole DNA to protein no the DNA to RNA to protein and
Right.
of course there are some viruses that like retroviruses that break that but
Blake, you're already
we don't
way
talk about
above.
those
You're
guys.
already way above their pay grade at that point. But it just mentioning retroviruses that you're off the scales.
Right.
It's which is truly baffling that as like one of the most if not the most technologically advanced country in the world, we have such horrible education in this country. Probably because we don't pay a lot of teachers like living wages, um, which is also same for professors. Professors do not get paid a lot of money, which like I know people think about like, oh yeah, they must get paid way more than like high school teachers, but no, they don't necessarily. That's not a guarantee at all,
Not
actually.
really, no. That's
So
why a lot of STEM professors usually have a side hustle at the university where they
yes.
try to bring in some money by doing research. But
Mm-hmm.
it reminded me of what I just a couple seconds ago said something that reminded me of a George Carlin quote. It's something along the lines of, "Now you have to keep in mind, most people are as dumb as you think they are, and about half of them are even way dumber than that."
Right. And
like,
that's absolutely true. I mean, with the sad thing is with the rise of like QAnon and this really big resurgence in anti-vax sentiment, like that's true. You know, weirdly enough, anti-vax was predominantly a left ideology rather than a right-leaning one
right,
before Trump, right? Like in the late '90s when you had Andrew Wakefield, and he was lying about the MMR vaccine and all that sort of stuff. The people who predominantly sided with him were actually left leaning. They were like, "Oh, we need to be natural and stuff. We don't need vaccines in our bodies because they're not natural." Well, and before recently, I really was hard pressed to find any conservatives who were anti-vax. I really was. But then Trump
mm,
came along and that completely flipped. Now the anti-vax sentiment is large. Now, of course, you still have the people who were there previously. They haven't gone anywhere. They didn't become pro-vax, right? But we also have
right,
this really big surge in anti-vax sentiment on the right now, and that's also scary.
yeah,
So fun stuff. Fun stuff. Another
yeah.
story. Illinois governor on mass shooting. Quote, a celebration of America was ripped apart by our uniquely American plague. Close quote.
Yeah, so that was just I thought that was a neat little snippet because that is very true. This very true wording. Celebration of America and like a very uniquely American issue that we have ruined it.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. I think we kind of touched on that earlier.
Yeah, yeah. I think we probably talked enough about that.
Turkey seizes Russian ship carrying stolen Ukrainian grain.
And this is just an example of what I keep referring to as the resource wars.
Mm-hmm.
As the country, as the world becomes more pressed for resources, will be doing well. And this has been happening for since forever. Like this is always something that happens in wartime. But
Right.
I mean, usually when we like Ukraine is bountiful in a lot of metals
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of industrial materials that are and agricultural you know products that are used all across the world, and grain is no exception of them. So we're Russia's literally bombing and killing them and stealing their food. So what else is new though? I mean, like I said, countries do this all the time. But like a lot of that, like Nazi gold you hear about that are so prized by collectors that treasure hunters go looking for,
Mm-hmm.
is stuff that is gold that the Nazis stole from the government of the countries they conquered, and then just resmelted with their own, logo stamped on it. Pretty much, like
Oh, okay.
there's always plunder and going on.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah, that was about it. We can move on to the next thing.
Uh, England's health service will use drones to deliver vital chemotherapy drugs.
Yes, so I read a couple things about this, and I think this is very interesting. So I forgot when exactly they said they wanted to start rolling this out, but there were several articles posted about it recently, and I just think it's really interesting. This whole because like we keep moving towards this concept of try like easier delivery methods for things like I mean we've always had like the postal service and stuff, but then we had companies like Amazon stepping in, and now they're moving towards these smaller vehicles that hold fewer packages but are more personalized. So, like in larger cities, they're thinking of putting in these basically sort of like miniature vans, like really tiny vans for delivering things. And you were seeing again this resurgence back to drone delivery, which I think, if done properly, could be very beneficial and well done and effective at delivering things.
Sure.
But using it for something useful like chemotherapy drugs is, I think, what we should prioritize first, instead of oh hey, I see they have a sale on beef jerky at Amazon, and I kind of want it by the end of the day, so let me pay a little extra for that drone shipping.
Right.
Like this technology could be utilized for far better purposes.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that'd be really cool, really like futuristic, you know, to have drones dropping this stuff. So that's pretty cool. I like it.
Yeah, that's a little
New
positivity.
information in Tampa, police dog shooting reveals disturbing behavior from officers, as opposed to what behavior? No.
Right. So I actually read several stories recently revolving or regarding dogs and the police, and this I just thought was very sad because it was another case where the dog was kind of like profiled because well it was a pit bull, and uh, according to the owner, they're very friendly and just curious. So basically, the police knock on this lady's door, and for most people that have dogs or cats that are constantly trying to get out, someone coming to the door, especially someone they don't know, can be stressful because uh, then they have to think about the dog getting out. And when it comes to the police, you can't just slam the door in their face and then be like, "Oh, sorry, I was just putting up my dog." Like, no, they are on edge now. They think that you just got a gun or something like that. So
Mm-hmm.
she, in shock, not knowing what to do, ended up letting the dog slip out. And so
Oh.
the police seeing this dog coming towards them, just immediately opened fire on it. And so the lady's really sad, upset about this, and the police people were joking about it. So let's see. So it says here in the article, so there was a shooting of the dog named Nala, and the Estrada, one of the officers who shot the dog, said she had violated department policy during a domestic violence investigation. Officer Robin Saracen, who has a disciplinary history with 11 violations, one for misuse of firearms, and Officer Brian Zopp discussed getting something to eat. Quote, "What are you going to eat? A hot dog?" Zopp wrote. Then Estrada wrote, "Hold the bullets on that one." Then
Jesus
Saracen
Christ.
says, "I kid you not. Blah ha 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 ha. These people are fucking idiots. They're psychopaths. They have no heart."
Yeah, that's insane that that was even discussed.
And from what I've looked into, those are the types of people that the police departments go for. Those are the people that they try to attract. These just low IQ, trigger happy, easily angered, egotistical people with a power complex. They have said that they openly discriminate against people with higher IQs and levels of empathy because they just wouldn't like the job or might find it boring. And it's like, no, they want a specific type of person because they know that there are people out there that would very easily abuse power if given to them.
Right.
And I was watching a video just earlier today about a guy who was a former police officer who basically got woke, and he was listening to this rap group I like called Run the Jewels, which are basically Gen Z's version of Rage Against the Machine. Like, you know, they're very politically active against like the system and racism and
Mm.
intolerance and war and corruption and all this stuff. And they've actually done some work with Zach De La Rocha, the leader of Rage Against the Machine, a couple times, which I think is really dope. So like Rage, like 1990s, early 2000s, that was like Rage's era, and then like now, uh, like from the 20 teens leading into the 2020s, like they sort of passed the torch on to Run the Jewels, which I think is really cool. But yeah, he was talking. Fuck, what did he say? It'll come back to me in a minute. Basically, the cop was just saying like, you know, I was listening to these rap lyrics about someone watching their a family member get arrested and how they're begging to not do this in front of their wife and children, and how cops are told to see these people as like less than human, like just like
Mm.
they're doing their machine, like, yeah, you law breaking piece of shit, and like they aren't thinking about people in the sense of like, they know this is going to financially ruin them. This is going to be a big blow to like every aspect of their life, but they just don't care. And this, his basically, the cop was basically just being like, yeah, I realize what I did was very wrong, and I feel very bad for partaking in that system. But that was a cool little change of heart. But yeah, just police killing dogs. What else is new? Actually, I think the dog lived, but it's just
Oh, good.
very very badly injured.
Now the dog
Yeah,
is a cab.
yeah, no. I bet you that dog isn't going to be so friendly the next time it sees a cop. I'll tell you that.
Um. Oh yeah, you just wrote or you just read that. Sorry. Okay. Um. India bans service charge at hotels and restaurants. The government instead encourage restaurants to pay fair wages to its employees and increase product prices to meet the cost. Well, I got news for India. That's not typically how businesses work.
No, exactly. I'm just like, this is a good sentiment, but it's
You
like
just
we're
screwed a bunch
encouraging
of people
businesses
out
to
of
pay
money.
them more. Exactly. Like I'm at like imagine if they did that here. It's like we're just going to like try to encourage, or maybe not even incentivize uh, restaurants and businesses to just pay people more. It's like, and the restaurants and businesses are probably just going to be like, yeah, we're just not going to do that.
I mean,
Like
because restaurants
that's exactly what
already
would
don't
happen.
have to pay minimum wage, right? Because the isn't the thinking that you're gonna make it up in tips, right?
For servers, that's
For
the case,
servers,
but
right?
for
Right.
like
I
for
mean,
like
no one should
line
have to do that.
workers and
No one should have to go through that. Period.
yeah, in some states it's like 217 an hour for servers, so they're basically supplementing almost a vast majority of their money through tips.
Right. Right. Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. That's whack, yo. Um. So yeah, an endless arms race: how to fight the NRA's absurd solution to mass shootings. More armed guards everywhere, more guns everywhere. Do you want to live in that country? It's time to say no.
But yeah, this is, we already sort of touched on this
Yeah.
earlier, but I mean, this is just sort of talking about how like really like uh I don't know, like would you be more willing to go through like armed checkpoints just to go to like big public places and feel safe than if necessary? Because I mean, already there are places like that across the world, like in major cities in like Europe, for example, and the Middle East and stuff. But like it, again, like what I don't know what the solution for this is because like with the like again with the Uvalde police, they don't hold any op- obligation to protect us like they say they are, and so I don't know. Maybe there's some really simple answer that, or even a complicated solution to this, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon.
Yeah. I don't think there is one single easy solution, but it's a lot of things that together would help, but nothing on its own I think is going to. Um,
It's a very complicated problem. But let's
I
see,
like I
what are they
said.
right after this?
Oh,
Okay, yeah.
you were. Oh yeah, I think you. Or, wait, maybe no, you didn't read this.
Here, I can read it.
Okay,
So it
go
says,
ahead.
you will recall the Uvalde shooter bought two semi-automatic rifles and more than 1,600 rounds of ammunition, and the Highland Park shooter clearly also had large magazines. Deaths almost triple when shooters use high-capacity magazines. No shit. The House passed a better bill that would ban high-capacity magazines and currently untraceable ghost guns, as well as requiring secure storage at home. Oh, okay, this is what I initiated. So it said the law should require also smart gun technology, a fingerprint or eye scan lock that makes handguns fireable only by their owners. So that is absolutely ridiculous because the technology for that, while present, is still very much underdeveloped. Like so I was so because for the most part, most like a vast majority, I'm talking like over 98+% of guns are purely mechanically operated. There's very little, if any, electronic parts in it, except for the ones that are dummy expensive. Which again, was this would make guns dummy expensive. But the fingerprint technology for stuff like this is just for like the common person is just not quite up to par. Like I was watching a video just earlier today about this YouTuber I follow called Black Rambo, and he got caught at the airport because he forgot to take some of the bullets out of the magazine for one of the guns he was transporting,
Mm-hmm.
and he spent like 5 minutes just trying to get the case open with the fingerprint scanner, and I'm just like, this is fucking ridiculous. Like I'd rather just have like a key or something. Like it's, I don't think that the whole smart gun thing is really the solution to this sort of issue. I mean, like it sort of reminds me of have you ever seen the movie District 9?
No.
So there's a it's this South African movie, and basically there are these aliens that not crash but sort of start living in these like slums outside of the city, and some of the alien weapons make their way into the hands of other people. But for some reason, the way that like the biometrics of the guns are, only people like with only aliens can shoot them. And this guy starts growing like an alien hand because he gets injected with some virus, and so he's like the only human that can actually use these weapons. And it is some cool like sci-fi technology, but I just don't think it's very um, practical. I mean, I do think it makes sense to have secure, safe storage at your house, but that's just regardless. Like especially if you have kids, like just keeping things out of reach where they can be readily accessible to intruder. I mean, but still where where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't
You know
really
what? We'll
think
have
the
to add it
like
to the list, Blake.
get yeah yeah add it to the list.
On our
It, it,
infinitely
it's
growing
on and
list.
off Netflix every now and then. It's on and off Netflix every now and then. So if you ever see it on there, it's worth a watch. It's a very fun movie too.
Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have to check it out. Um, Oh well, I think that's all of our articles.
That is it. That is a wrap.
I'm trying to think of like, was there anything cool in the science news I've seen recently? Well, our the the aquarium, the local aquarium, which you've probably heard of before, was part of a database that was featured in a recent article on turtle senescence.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so some of the data from that aquarium, of which we have no ties, um, was used. It went into a database, and then that database was pulled by these researchers who were doing some work on turtle senescence. And so, yeah.
All right,
Um,
pretty cool.
Weirdly enough, I happened to be reading about senescence in ectotherms, and then like two papers on uh, senescence and ectotherms came out that same week, and I was like, spooky.
Okay, what is senescence?
So senescence is just the process of aging.
Oh, okay,
Typically,
okay.
typically now broadly speaking, as organisms age, or well, I should say, age is typically associated with decreased fecundity and increased death. So the older you get, the less babies you have, and the more likely you are to die. Now, that's typical. That's not for everything. There are lots of organisms which experience what's called negligible senescence, which, as the name implies, they basically they don't age in essence in that sense. Their fertility rates stay about the same. Their death doesn't really fluctuate all that much. Their rate of death, I should say, doesn't really fluctuate all that much. Um, and So turtles and tortoises have been thoroughly investigated on that front because there's like a almost 300-year-old tortoise that's still alive, I think, or maybe he's like 200 years old. I think is what it is. Um, there are like Greenland sharks that are like 400 years old.
So yeah, like 500 years old. Like those guys live freaking ancient.
There's a species of clam apparently which might live to 500 years old. Flowering plants, at least some of them, like I think it's like over 90%, seem to show no age-related decline. So they just keep on going. And in fact, there are some trees that are like over 5,000 years old. You know?
Yeah, so like baobabs, quite a few of the redwoods that were even like hundreds, if not over 1,000 years old, ended up
Mm-hmm.
getting cut down because lumber at the time was just more easily accessible, and we didn't have as much value in these big old trees. But here in the South, oak trees like live oaks are
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of ones, especially down further south in South Louisiana. You can see, and I guess just in general, in the older estates in the South that are just several hundred years old. Like on Avery Island, they have this one tree called I think it's called like the Cleveland oak, and it's because like like 100 years ago or whenever Grover Cleveland was president, he there's a picture of him like uh, hugging the tree or standing next to the
Really?
tree. And yeah, I remember whenever I went there, I hugged the tree and got a picture by it. So I was like, hey, I hugged the same tree a president did. That's pretty cool.
That is pretty cool. Yeah. If I remember
Yeah.
correctly, the story, because we mentioned it earlier, the story about Teddy Roosevelt, of which he earned his nickname Teddy, actually occurred on the border of Louisiana and Mississippi.
That's right. It was in like around the central part of the state, just a bit east, which, for a record, it is like the middle of no. Even
It
today,
is,
it's like the
yes.
middle of nowhere.
It's
So back
still
then,
the middle of
must
nowhere.
have been untamed wilderness. So I can imagine there'd be some large animals there that don't get seen too often. So I mean, I doubt there's black bears or anything right there still. I mean, I could be wrong, but I heavily doubt it because we've driven out most of the large dangerous wildlife out of the state,
Oh,
except for you know
there's still
for the
black
occasional
bears.
mountain lion.
There's still black bears out here. Um,
Yeah, yeah,
black
probably in
bears,
like Kisatchie.
black bears though are small for bears. Um, There,
Right. Yeah. They're nothing on like a grizzly or a brown bear.
yeah, I once heard. I don't know the veracity of this, but I'm gonna say it anyways. I once heard that like if you're riding a horse and it like smells a black bear, it's like okay, it's a black bear, that's fine. But if it smells a grizzly bear, apparently they just lose their mind. At least that's what I've heard. I don't know.
That's funny. Yeah, because animals can smell stuff like that. Like there's a this is just a neat tidbit of information, but like in like Native American folklore, like smelling like the smell of like rotting meat is a sign that there's like predators around because they'll just reek of dead shit.
Mm-hmm.
And also like hearing like a lot of quiet in the woods, like dead silent, is also not a good sign because it can also mean there's predators around and everything is like shutting up because they don't want to get caught by it. So like two
Right.
go hand in hand.
Yeah. That's cool.
And I've seen like a stuffed like grizzly bear too, like in person before, and
Mm-hmm.
those things are tall. But
Yes, yeah, yeah. Black bears are pretty small by comparison. They're not very big. I mean, I certainly wouldn't want to mess with one in the wild, of course, but by comparison, they are quite small.
yeah.
Um,
I want to run into a. I want to go to Malaysia and run into a moon bear. Those guys are so funny looking.
yeah. I mean, yeah. There are some cool bears. Um, sloth bears are also kind of cool. You know.
Yeah. Well, that just about does it, though. I mean, it's
Alrighty.
I don't know, a lot of cool, interesting topics. Feel like we made some good talking points about some stuff and things.
Nice. So you want to sign us off?
Right. Yeah. So thank you for listening to whoever ends up listening to this. I hope you have a spectacular day or morning or evening or whatever time you end up listening to this. And if you like it, just keep tuning in and thanks again for checking us out. And y'all have a good one. Later.